Since the time I began doing this work, it has become more clear to me that there is a very specific language that the symbols that everyone sees during altered state represents, and that the deeper you go, the more specific the language is. And the language is related to codes. And the coding gives us indications of what is happening inside us and related to our different levels of existence. And the entire purpose of anything to do with the conscious mind is quite simply to slow everything down and almost freeze frame, like a photograph, what is present at that one point, that one moment, in and out of time. Because there is in time according to here, and then there is time according to the cosmos. In relativistic physics, it's known as dilation, dilated time, time that has been expanded. Down here, things are more concentrated because we are living in the world of mass and 3D. So everything becomes more focused and more limited to the way in which we receive and exchange information. So fundamentally, everything that is happening on a daily basis is outside of the limits of one's own conscious control. This is happening all the time. It's just we're not aware of it. So what we do here is go, as part of the journey, exploring what is happening on the other levels within ourselves so that we can begin to see and understand patterns. Otherwise everything just keeps expanding infinitely. And as it does, nothing comes back to a starting point. So patterns are about something going out. We believe that the physical body is the limit of our self, and that the conscious mind is the limit of our mind. That's when all the problems begin. For whatever reason, doesn't matter how humans have come to see or understand that, or perceive life like this. Of course, if I say to myself, this is the limit of my existence, it's more compact, so it's easy to work with. And if I say to myself, my conscious mind is the limit of mind, that also is easy. The interesting thing, though, is that everyone is thinking the same. So in what way are we really different? And in what way can we get to understand what is the purpose then of being here? And if we take what I've just said into consideration for 1 minute, is it any wonder why we're not so happy with life? We've already told ourselves this is the limit of our existence and this is the limit of our mind. And everything else is bigger. There's more. The planet is much bigger than us. And the consciousness that we have is multiplied by at least 7 billion where humans are concerned. Take all the other animals and minerals and plants into consideration, they all represent some level of energy, exchange, and they all collectively represent consciousness. Yes, it's easier to limit ourselves and to say, this is the only amount I'm taking into consideration. It's like a very big pie. And I'm only taking what I can chew. I'll bite off that amount. If we bite off more, everything starts getting confusing. So the easy way to begin to observe what all this means is to start from the principle. Because that is what we'll be repeating. That's the reason why we limit ourselves. Because if we extend and say, I am not physically here, I am everything. Okay? Here's another kook. He thinks he's everything. She thinks she's everything. There's no separation of borders, boundaries. That's the first. And then the mind. So you have your vessel, your vehicle, and then you have the way in which the mind works. There's intellectual process, which takes information in and orders it. There's sense, which we've spoken about, the smelling, touching, hearing, tasting. The feeling of emotion, because those senses activate something inside that we feel. The sense translates from the sense in its raw form to a meaning. The meaning then translates to a feeling, the feeling then translates to a thought, and the thought then has another reaction. It formulates a picture of what the meaning is on another level. This is what's going on every single second of every single minute of every single day in your life. So where in all of this is the stable point? How do we make sense of it? This is why the conscious mind has programmed itself in such a way to keep most of this information out so that we don't fall into confusion. And this confusion creates doubt, and the doubt then presses the fear button. Because we are all looking for something to begin with that gives us a sense of meaning, and the meaning at a higher level becomes purpose. What is the purpose of you? Life, your life, the world around you, life itself. Why is it all here? Why are we here? What is that about? These are questions that humans have asked themselves many times. And they have been contemplating for thousands of years. However, if quite simply you get out of the way and let life tell you what it's about, let the planet speak to you and feel you as it does anyway, without which you wouldn't be here, without the minerals, without the plant world, without the exchange of the gases that are needed to keep you alive. Listen to this and you will begin to hear very clearly what all that's about. And see that you're a part of it. Because through the education system we've been taught that we're exclusive from it. We're a specific being with a specific makeup coming from a specific place with a specific purpose. And as an educator I will go inside you and I will find what that purpose is. And then I will help you to realize what your goals are in life. To become the doctor you want to, or the scientist you want to, or the hairdresser that you want to, or the greatest mum in the world. Why not? Yes? But all of this, what is important, is to see that that's the difference between intervention from parents and society and what's actually simply there. And who's to say that these indigenous people, or even some of these children that were born, left by their parents in the wild, they grew up and they've had intervention from wolves or apes, that they know less than we do? Because the key here, fundamentally for everybody, is to give them a sense of purpose. Without which, inside, we feel, okay, what's the point? Why should I continue? And you can choose to have the sense as something very big, like world peace, or eradicate global warming and take pollution away, whatever it is, peace and harmony. Or it can be something very simple, which is to fulfill what it is that you need to clear from previous times. Just that in itself is big. And I would say that when we divert away from that, those debts keep coming back. Like the parking debts that you forgot, and the 20 pounds that you promised someone 20 years ago that you forgot about, or the toy that you promised your child that you would buy but you forgot about. These little things, they're not very, very important, but they build up, they accumulate. And as far as your soul's evolution is concerned, that's what we need to focus on. This is why I say, let's go back to a principle. If we are going to take into consideration that we are a soul that has been around, a soul being a fractal of the eternal in the form of what is called or known spirit. Soul is the part of spirit that goes on the journey, and it, in the process of the journey, explores and experiences and accumulates knowledge. And this knowledge needs to transform into wisdom. And that wisdom needs to become beingness. The way this happens is when we see how everything is interconnected, first. Secondly, because of the interconnectivity, we begin to see more the sameness rather than the differences. Differences are easy to see if your reference is simple and limited. Sameness is hard to see because your reference has to be expanded. But how can I be expanded without being centered somewhere? In other words, how can I be expanded and not get lost? So it always looks like two-edged sword. It always looks like some paradox. It always feels like. And the reason is very simple. Whilst you're here listening right now to words coming out of my mouth, you're also existing on multiple planes. You may not know that in your conscious mind, but the parts of you that are existing on the multiple planes really does know that. And that is the part that is picking up information, because I'm taking your minds to there, because that is what this is all about. Experiencing the real you, not simply the limited you. Remember, ego is not in the least bad, or weak, or nasty, it's just very limited. So if we hand our power over to the limited part, what do you think you're going to get? Limited results, limited perspective, limited understanding, and then limited feelings too. I'm not happy with life, I need something more. I need a better job, I need a better partner, I need a better car, I need a better house, I need a better whatever. It's the multiple levels that we don't get taught about in school, and that we are not encouraged to see and reconnect with, consequently, neither by our families or society, because they don't know either. And every time something new comes up, the first thing we do is, which box can we put it in? Something just happened. It's unusual. It was something. I don't quite know what it was. But I saw a flash, I heard some sounds, and I had some feelings. How do I describe it? What do I make of it? What box does it fit into? This is how the normal conscious mind works. It needs to put things into boxes, and they need each box to have a label. And that label needs to fit a system that we have chosen is something that we understand. What's all that for? To keep comfortable, to keep from getting uneasy. Because the random nature, chaos itself, doesn't sit well with the human mind, or the human awareness, state of awareness. Because mind I'm using as a much bigger aspect, both of ourselves and of reality. So if the very thing that nature is made up of, and the very way that it functions, is disturbing us, I would say that's probably one of the reasons why we don't want to know too much about it. So we filter that information. In some cases we even switch it off. There's too much going on when you're in nature. All that sun, and all those free ions, and all those little creatures, and all that green. And if you start going deeper, you start seeing other things. You might think you're hallucinating, even if you've not taken anything. There's a lot going on, big time. It's big, it's much bigger than us. So it's overpowering, makes us feel small and insignificant. How do we handle that? And which us is feeling small? Which part of us? So this is the point. Perception only from self, the ego self. When we see actually what's there, it does reflect upon us and make us feel small. If we then turn it around and look at what is there from the soul level, we begin to see, all that I am experiencing, all that is actually there, is an extension of what I am made of. It is why I've said a long time ago, different occasions, essential nature. Nature of life and the nature of existence. Your essential nature, through nature, in life, links to the nature of existence. The Dzogchen of life, the nature of its existence. And because of that, we have then this term of logos, which means higher purpose and reason of existence. It's the same meaning. It doesn't mean word, it means what is the purpose, the higher purpose of existence. Purpose and reason. And that is how we get a sense. You may have read this, you may have heard it, but it's there at the foundation of many philosophies and or cultural perceptions of life rather than scientific ones, or we can say religious perception of life. Because that has its own purpose. That's about how we reconnect and bring people together. And science, that's religion, and science has its own purpose. It's about breaking everything up into categories and saying, we have now found a way of how to label. We know where it fits, and it's a taxonomy. Looking at how things fit into an order. Try to order everything. However, life doesn't see itself either way. Life does not see itself as being religious, neither does it see itself as being scientific. It's humans that do that. I can only say, from my experience, what life sees. I have learnt about what I am through life and through myself. And through that, that's the intermediary, that's the mesocosmos. It then opened up a much different perspective of what macrocosmos really means. And there are multiple planes, multiple levels of that. So if we take into consideration this different perspective and approach, other things will open and reveal themselves to you. And as they do, don't worry about getting confused and having doubts, because that's why the theory that I've given helps to give you some kind of different paradigm. Basically, all of the key components are the same. It's just the way in which we perceive them makes the difference. Should we continue to perceive life through our small self, limited self? So that's what ego means. From now on, I just call it small self, to not confuse it. Or should we begin to open our mind to experience ourselves for what we actually already are? I'm not introducing you to anything new. All I'm doing is reintroducing you to what you are. One very much is limited to who, that's the small self, and the essential nature, or your soul, is the what. Because it is essential, its personality and character, if you like, is much more in line with the source. But because it's so little and small, its personality and character is very in line with the parents you come from and the culture you come from. Can you see that difference? And it is a significant one, because we end up either living the life of what's been projected and imposed, or we can seek to reconnect with what we have been for a very long time. And from my observation until today, it's that other side that gives us the sense of life and excitement. Your soul is what drives you to recognize the beauty of poetry, the beauty of color, the magnificence of sound and light. Your programming will take that essential quality and program it in a specific way, because your parents will hear this kind of music and they will be dealing with this type of decor in the house and these types of colors and these types of smells of the food. Do you see the point? That has been put into a specific order and construct. However, your appreciation of it, the fact that you have that substance in the beginning, comes from before you have come into the body and met them. And this is the key here. Therefore, all the work that the blueprint is busy with is to reintroduce you to your essential nature, your soul, and begin to live from there. That's what the planet wants humans to do, but instead they reversed everything. They created their own world and then projected that out, not only to each other, but out onto nature itself, so they can sit and work out what it's all about. It's like you get invited to a party, everything is on offer, but instead of seeing what's there, you bring your already seeing and your already understanding to the party, and you will only then pay attention to what you understand, because that's what you want. So let's look at the basics. Limited self, little self, ego is about who and want. A pattern and a program passed down over thousands of generations. So, essential nature, unlimited self, responds to what is needed to be done. First and foremost, pay the debt. Clear off stuff that's blocking you from reconnecting and being 100%. If you can do that down here, you can do it all the way to the eternal. That's the point of being here. Because it's the densest of all levels. Everything has to become more dense. All that expanded consciousness gets closer, 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 closer to become first the planet, and then everything the planet is, and then the people on the planet, and all of the mountains, and the mineral world, and the plant world, and very dense if you look at it. From particle point of view. Do you see? So they say, of all the particles that are out in space, it just fits a tiny little space. If we look at mass. We have a lot of that mass down here. And that is the task. How to transform that mass, the limitation that it represents, into space. Which is why we don't deal with that element until last. So we deal with the elements that are there. Your earth, your water, your fire, your air. And look at the qualities accordingly. Because those qualities are what make up the essential nature of each of the elements, rather than it being a characteristic, an aspect of thought or emotion. We don't need to go down that route, because we have too much of it. It's become very, very confusing. And the simple confusion is, which half and which I do I see from? The personal, limited, ego, little self, having want, personal, need, or the non-personal, expanded, connected to, infinite, soul, essential nature, responding to need, to what is needed to be done, And of course there has to be a balance, because this part gives us a reference for down here. That's all it ever was meant to do. And what has happened with humanity is that the reference has become the whole picture. It's called anthropocentric perspective of life. You understand? Anthropo means person, human. We need to extend that into a geocentric to start with, so it's earth-centered, and then a cosmocentric perspective. That's where it starts. Micro is anthropocentric, meso is geocentric, and cosmo obviously is cosmocentric, the macro. The purpose is to interconnect all three. And what I'm telling you now would normally take lots of lifetimes in the past. Certainly no master or tradition would give you this information like that. What I'm doing is not giving you secret, sacred information without any forethought. What I'm doing is reflecting the whole picture. So if you go back or go away and say, well, I got this info, I got that info, I got this fragment, I got that fragment, but I'm a bit confused. So I was told by them is, show them the whole picture. And then within that, let's look at where you are. And then within that, let's look at what's gone wrong such that you don't understand yourself and purpose, let alone what the whole picture is about. Make any sense? Really simple. The whole picture is big, and there's a lot. It's within itself, it's complex. There's a lot. But when you don't understand it, that's when it turns into complicated. Complicated simply means I don't get it. I don't get all the many different parts. And that will always happen if you try to understand it from the small self. Of course the small self is not going to get all the big picture. It's limited itself to the small self. If you're only going to look at life through one of your eyes, that's all you're going to see. But if every single one of your cells becomes another eye, there's 10 trillion perceptions. That's a real wake up. And you will no longer be stuck to that one little eye. Suddenly, it's a different world that you're seeing and you are part of. Making any sense at all? And by doing that in you, you will be able to do that, not only with and for other people, that comes later, but with the mineral world, and see the extraordinary order that is there within those little subatomic particles that create crystals and minerals. And then the plant world and the animal world and all of nature itself. And by seeing and understanding all of that, you will look at another person and you'll go, yep, I can see their programs. I can see what's going on. Basically, you debug everything and you see what's there. You don't pay attention to the layers that are there, that they put in front. Because everyone's hiding behind layers because they know that they're small. If they're living from that perspective, then they are small. Because the small self is frightened. Anything that's bigger than it makes it feel uneasy. And if everything is bigger than you, then everything is going to make you feel uneasy. Except for other humans. And so you rank yourself according with other humans. Do you see what I'm saying? He or she is bigger, better, smarter, more degrees, more pretty, more talented. Always ranking. Always comparing and contrasting. Can you imagine one mountain comparing itself to its neighbor? Or a tree comparing and contrasting and saying, I've got bigger roots than you. I'm taller, look, I got more branches. And anyway, you don't have fruit, I do. They just are. And that is the whole point. In their beingness, they represent the nature of existence. Why does existence have to explain itself? Why does it have to justify its existence? So, this is the starting point. By just weighing this up, considering. So in Zen, they talk of emptying the mind so that you can be present with what manifests and reveals itself to you, rather than what you think you own. I had a thought. Which I had which thought? Thoughts are there. They're constantly moving. And the I, depending on which part of you is perceiving and therefore responding, that is what the Zen is about. Emptying everything, no attachment until you see that those thoughts exist and you exist. And the more empty you are, you're just a vessel to contain thoughts. So much for intellectual property. No one owns anything. Except the necessity to take responsibility for being here, not for existing. So, we can begin.